Armand Bayou was and is one of the most biologically rich areas on the entire Texas coast. There is a great richness of life that exists on Armand Bayou, and it comes from the fact that there are three distinct ecosystems that converge here. We're standing over the tidal stream of Armand Bayou. It's surrounded by a coastal flatwoods forest, and behind the trees are one of the rarest remaining habitats in Texas, which is coastal prairie. So it's this convergence of these three ecosystems that accounts for the great richness of life that's here. Bayou originally was called Middle Bayou because it's the central of three main tributaries that flow into Clear Lake. Taylor Bayou is to the east, Clear Creek is to the west, and Middle Bayou is right in between those two, which is why originally it was called Middle Bayou. And slowly over time, as we all know, Pasadena grew, and this area began to be recognized by Pasadena residents as an area very worthy of preservation. And some of the early Pasadena leaders, the founding fathers of Pasadena, a lot of the early councilmen and mayors of Pasadena, along with one of the leading Texas naturalists, tried to have this land set aside.
The name was changed to Armand Bayou in honor of a man named Armand Bayou, who was interested in the preservation of wild lands around the Houston-Galveston area, amongst other environmental issues. And his tragic death in 1970 precipitated interest in changing the name of Middle Bayou to Armand Bayou in his honor.
So here we are today, not only to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Armand Bayou Nature Center, but also to recognize, and I hope it's still a surprise to him, Andy Helms.
Well, it was very important to honor Andy because of the incredibly significant role that he played. One of the key things was the city of Pasadena had to establish jurisdiction over this area. And establishing the navigability of Armand Bayou, or what was called Middle Bayou back then, was that first step.
This was a big deal back then, and we wanted to preserve something for this whole area here, a nature center. You just had to think outside the box at that time. Because if you're just worried about garbage pickup, police protection, fire protection, all that, which goes along with being on council, but this was actually outside the box for Pasadena to take the lead on buying this property.
And so I came to work for the city as the city planner in 1965. In the summer of that year, Houston began again with annexations, thinking that they were locked in with their judgment in 1962. They passed an ordinance that annexed a 10-foot strip extending from their boundary along the southern boundary of Pasadena all the way over to the bay, and then back around Webster, and then back up to Houston. City Council and the city attorney and I found this action by Houston offensive. What a surprise. And we said, gee, is there anything we can do? We examined the law, and what can we do? Houston has this 10-foot strip. They've cut us off. Pasadena can never expand or grow geographically. We're stuck. There's a provision in state law where we can annex along a navigable stream. And as luck would have it, there was a stream that initiated and began in Pasadena called Middle Bayou, and it extended south to Clear Lake. One of our city crew, guys on the survey team, and I went down to Berea Boulevard to Bay Area Park, which was in existence at that time. We launched a canoe, and then Pete and I paddled that canoe up Armand Bayou. We wanted to be sure it was navigable, and it was, and we were able to, we actually were able to paddle through the Baywood Country Club at that time, which was at the corner of Genoa Red Bluff and Red Bluff. And we said, my golly, it is navigable all the way to Genoa Red Bluff, which was our southern boundary. So In August, we had a couple of special meetings. We met late to the night as we worked with maps and aerial photographs, and we proceeded to pass an annexation ordinance, annexing roughly a strip down Armand, or Middle Bayou, as it was known then, 2,500 feet on either side to Clear Lake, and that launched another legal battle. We worked out an agreement with the city of Houston in which they basically said, okay, we will recognize your annexation of that 5,000 feet. And we worked out a deal with them. We talked to Friendswood Development Company, and Charlie Pence was their development manager, and they said, we don't think so. We want to do our development. And we said, well, we don't know that we like that idea. So the negotiations went on for a while, and then finally they said, well, we'll sell you the land. We
had a tight budget. Times were tight back then, and trying to find the financing to buy this property. $2 million from Friendswood Development Company. And that was probably a cheap price at the time. They wanted to develop it, and we didn't want it developed. We wanted it preserved as a nature center back then.
HUD says, we'll give you $1 million, but you've got to match it. We didn't have any park bonds. We didn't have that money in our reserves or anywhere else in our budget, operating budget. And so we reviewed the law again, and we found a provision in state law that let us, the city, issue something called certificates of obligation. Mayor Doyle and the finance department and public, where all of us were in agreement, we issued certificates of obligation for $800,000 or $900,000 in that range, matched the money from the federal government, and bought the land.
I'll remember it the rest of my life because it's just one of those moments in your life that you remember and you're proud of, and I'm extremely proud of what's happened in Armand Bayou.
I'm honored, really delighted to have had a role in it, and it was just a role. There were, as the mayor pointed out today, dozens and dozens of people that were involved, and I can't stress enough how important it was that everybody pitched in. It's a nature center. It's relatively untamed natural environment. The environment is critical, very important to us. We read stories every week about the environment and how it impacts us, whether it's hurricane preparedness or global warming or other issues, and to understand and have a piece of the natural environment right here helps us to better appreciate what we need to do.